Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for BeeChicas Honey Love. I am Kathy Lane, Programs, Events, and Outreach Coordinator with the Boulder Public Library. Jess Rainey is the broadcast engineer behind the scenes. And on screen with me today are the BeeChicas. We have Cynthia, Teresa, Deborah, and Tracy. And I will introduce all of them after we do some housekeeping. All of our online events are an extension of library services. Library conduct policies apply in our online space. Visit boulderlibrary.org for these, as well as tips on internet safety and privacy. This event is being recorded and will be available on Boulder Public Library's YouTube channel after today. Closed captioning for this live event is available on Facebook Live Broadcast and will also be available on the YouTube recording. This event is part of Seed to Table events focusing on sustainable living with gardening, cooking, BeeChica programs. If you enjoy this presentation, we have more upcoming virtual programs. Please visit our website at boulderlibrary.org for our full virtual events calendar. Finally, at any time during this event, you can post your questions in the chat. We'll answer your questions during the question and answer portions of the event. We want to thank the Boulder Library Foundation for their generous sponsorship of this and our library programs. So the BeeChicas, we have been collaborating with you since 2015. We started with the Pollinator Appreciation Month and launched our Seed to Table workshops. And friends, if you're passing by on the main library Boulder Rec Path, you can see the BeeChicas taking care of the library beehives on the roof. Tracy, Teresa, Deborah, and Cynthia are artists, scientists, gardeners, educators, and most of all, beekeepers. BeeChicas, thank you for adapting your in-person workshops to a virtual experience. We're looking forward to learning how honey is made with Deborah and Tracy and how to use honey in cooking with Teresa and Cynthia. Cynthia and Teresa will now start us off on our Honey Love workshop, and they will tell us about our special guest chef, Hannah Van Ark.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our kitchen. Today, we are going to be putting together some recipes for you in the second half of this workshop. And Hannah Van Ark, our daughter, is going to be our guest clinical nutritionist and chef via video. And so first of all, we're going to learn about honey and how it's made and some of the very important properties of honey and why it's good for you, from Tracy and Deborah.
Glad everyone is with us. Tracy's going to queue up a few slides that we'll share with you. So this is the four of us, as Kathy mentioned. We are founding partners with the City of Boulder and the library for the Pollinator Bee Boulder Festival, Pollinator Appreciation Month. And this is a picture of the four of us outside in our booth last year. Our event this year went virtual. And there's a quick shot of us up on the roof, as Kathy mentioned, tending to the beehives. So today, we have an incredible workshop with Teresa and her daughter on cooking with honey. So we thought we'd start out by talking to you about what exactly is honey. We were chatting about it today and we decided it's simply solar-powered fuel. What does that mean? Honeybees go around to plants, to our gardens, and they gather nectar from those plants. And on the next slide, we can talk about a few of those points. So, honeybees have a separate stomach we call it a honey stomach, where they gather nectar from different flowers. And that nectar in their honey stomach mixes with different enzymes. They take that back to the beehive and they transfer that to a house bee. And that mixture then mixes with more enzymes from that house bee. And they eventually deposit it into the honeycomb, into a cell in the honeycomb, where that mixture will sit. They'll fan it with their wings and till the moisture content in that nectar mixture is below 18%. And once it's below 18% moisture, it's officially honey. It's cured nectar that has become honey so that it will never spoil and it will last forever. They found honey in the tombs of pharaohs that is still edible. For beekeepers, the way that we know that honey is cured is on the next slide. We'll show you a frame. Oh, this is the new slide, making honey. So we just talked about the low moisture content in honey and the importance of making sure that you're not harvesting nectar, which could ferment if that moisture content isn't below 18%. So it takes about 556 honeybees visiting 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. That's how precious honey is, and how much we should appreciate the effort behind what it takes to actually make the honey we like to eat.
And I've heard Brett, that to make a pound of honey, it's about a trip around the planet for like many bees. 500 honey.
It's easy to think about, that tiny little insect. Yeah. So for beekeepers, when we're ready to harvest honey in our hive, the way that we know it's ready to be harvested is you can see that slice of a photo with the white waxy covering. We call those cappings. The bees cap that honey when the moisture content falls below 18%, and that's a signal to us that is officially cured honey and it's ready to be harvested. So there are a few different ways you can do it. You can see that little tool that's lifting off those wax cappings, and we'll take all the cappings off that frame of honey and we'll stick it in an extractor, which is that top photo, and spin it around and around like a centrifuge, and that honey will fly out and it'll run down through the spout into a filter, and we'll gather honey that way. People also cut out their comb and crush it and filter honey through, filter it through the same filter, but crushing up the comb if they don't have an extractor, or if they're top bar beekeepers and they don't have frames of honey. And I think, yeah, Tracy, do you want to talk about crystallization? It's so cool.
Yeah. So I just want to reiterate that when we filter, it's not ultra filtering. It's keeping all that pollen bits and maybe a little bit of propolis still in the honey. So when we hear about ultra filtering of honey, that's when the honey is heated and then pushed through very fine filters to move any trace pollen. So you can't trace it back to China, for instance. So beekeepers just strain their honey, really. So this is a jar of honey that's been 2 jars, one that's fresh and one that's crystallized. Beekeepers can force crystallization, and we call it creamed honey. But up here on Sugarloaf Mountain, where I live and where Deborah lives in Boulder, her honey crystallizes in about 2 or 3 months. Is that right, Deborah? Whereas mine takes about maybe 6 months to crystallize.
Yeah.
So the difference is the flowers in Boulder. Yeah. So the difference is the ratio of fructose to glucose that's in honey. And if you see this one on the right, like say these were the same age, this one here on the left that's crystallized probably has a higher simple sugar called glucose, and this one has a higher fructose content. But it has, so really we get all these different varieties of honey based on what flowers the bees are foraging on. So beware of fake honey. That's the honey that will probably never crystallize and has been ultra filtered, or it's actually cut with artificial sweeteners like corn syrup. And there are 300 different varieties of honey in the US. Just within Boulder, you can taste the difference between South Boulder honey versus North Boulder. Like even at Long's Iris Garden, if there was hives just 6 blocks away, and they were under a chestnut tree. So they tasted strongly of chestnut and different than the ones at Long's Iris Garden. So Hannah's going to speak to the beneficial properties of honey for eating. The BeeChicas will have a workshop on the medicinal benefits of honey, and so we'll speak more to that then as well. So I'm going to send this back to Deborah, and she's going to talk about different varieties of honey, like honey and tasting those different varieties.
Well, and we totally agree with Winnie the Pooh that eating honey is definitely a good thing to do. So there are actually honey sommeliers, similar to a wine sommelier, people that go through a training and can judge honey and judge different honey tastings. Honey has a very complex flavor profile. And this is a great chart that sort of lays out in a very visual way all the different nuances of honey. And from floral to fruity to warm, some of the darker honeys that you find can taste very woody. There's even some unpleasant tastes in there, chemical and spoiled. But you can really, I mean, the BeeChicas have had a honey tasting workshop in the past where we've gathered honey from our travels really all over the world and put them out, and honey from our own gardens and beehives. And it's just remarkable, the difference in the taste. And some of them are subtle and some of them are not so subtle. But it's really fun to taste honey and try to capture some of those individual flavors that exist. And I think on the next slide, it shows you a picture. This is a couple years ago, I harvested honey from my beehives each month. And I wanted to try and capture that range that I knew existed, because honey is just a product of what's blooming in the garden. So you can see on the left, that's the earliest honey that I harvested in the spring, all the way to the right, which is the dark honey, which was harvested in September. So that's just a perfect visualization of what is blooming in downtown Boulder. I'm an urban beekeeper right downtown, so it's my garden and beyond. But the color in a honey tasting, you'd look at the color. Is it light or dark, pale amber? You'd smell it, fruity, floral, earthy. And then moving beyond that, you can taste it. And the taste difference between the light honey on the left, which is very light and floral, it literally tasted like a garden looks, to the honey on the far right, which tasted much richer and almost like caramel. So
which is your preference, Deborah?
Well, I prefer the darker honeys, actually. I like the fall honeys.
Oh, and I like the spring honeys. They're lighter, and up here I have a bit of citrus and honey. Good, cool.
And then we're going to wrap this up and move on to the cooking. But of course, we always want to share with you the importance of supporting pollinators and some simple things you can do in your own lives and your own gardens, eliminating the use of pesticides, which is a big one, and add forage. You know, we talked about how 2 million visits to flowers to make 1 pound of honey. That is a lot of forage. You can't have too much forage. Take out your grass and plant some flowers. Buy organic produce. If you're purchasing local organic produce, you're supporting the farmers and the growers that are like-minded, that are already eliminating pesticides and thinking of pollinators in the work they do. And finally, to Tracy's point about adulterated honey and honey purity and the issues around that, if you want to avoid getting honey that maybe isn't 100% pure, support a local beekeeper. Find somebody you know and buy your honey locally.
So Deborah and Tracy, we had a couple of questions related to what you were talking about. How can you tell if you are buying real honey that isn't cut with sugar or corn syrup? Like if you're just looking on the shelf, how do you tell?
Oh, it's nearly impossible to tell really just by looking at it. You wouldn't know. That's
I was
why we
going
try to talk to people about not being afraid of crystallization. Because sometimes you'll see honey that's starting to crystallize, or maybe it is crystallized, and that's always a very good sign. But if you really, really, really want to be sure about your honey, find a beekeeper and talk to them about their practices and buy local honey.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. That know your beekeeper. If you shop at Costco and you look at Rice's raw Colorado honey, I've actually those beekeepers, and it truly is Colorado raw honey.
Mm-hmm.
And then David Mackey makes a comment. The forest fires gave me a smoked out yellow jacket bee ? And David, I'm wondering if you're talking about a wasp or a bee. Is there a bee that's called a yellow jacket? No? Okay.
No.
All right. Tell us more, David. And thank you so much. That's it for the questions so far.
Oh, there's pollinating wasps that look like a yellow jacket, and it's this anyway, this wasp evolved to eat meat originally, and then there's one wasp that turned back to pollen vegetarian. So if it's collecting pollen from your flowers, it's a bee. If it's eating your sugary soda or your picnic, it's a wasp.
Well, Teresa and Cynthia, we're excited to see your cooking recipes. Have you talked to us about that?
Great. Well, we have some recipes that we're going to share with you. We're going to start out with a fig and goat cheese crostini with a honey drizzle. Moving on to a salmon honey miso glazed salmon and stir fry vegetables. And then Hannah's going to start us out with honey banana nut muffins, so that those will cool in time for dessert. So we're just going to start our video, and we'll stop it if we have any time for questions during the video, but we'll definitely answer questions at the end.
And I wanted to say we recorded this last week. Right here in Teresa's kitchen, and had so much fun doing it. And so thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, because our daughter Hannah is now hiking with her husband up over Telluride. So they're a week away in the high mountains. So here she is last week in our kitchen. Hi, this is Teresa from the BeeChicas, and I'm introducing my daughter Hannah Van Ark, who is our guest chef today on Cooking with Honey Love. And so Hannah, we're going to take our masks off because we're mother-daughter and we do not have to wear masks around each other because we're together a lot. We hang out quite a bit. Yeah. So I'm going to let Hannah tell you about herself and about what she's going to cook today.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Mom. Yes, my name's Hannah Van Ark. I'm actually a registered dietitian here in Colorado. So I went to CU to get my degrees in physiology and neuroscience to start, and then went up to CSU to do my master's degree in nutrition science, then did my internship down at Children's Hospital, Colorado, and now I work as a clinical dietitian on the inpatient side at the University of Colorado Hospital down at Anschutz. So I've had a lot of different nutrition experiences over the course of my life. I was also involved in research at both CSU and CU, looking into the effects of phytonutrients found in plants on human health and heart disease in particular. So, and I've also done cooking demonstrations at the hospital. I love to cook, and so I'm very excited to be here to share that with you guys. The three that we're going to be cooking today are an appetizer. It's going to be a goat cheese crostini with fresh figs and a drizzle of honey for an appetizer. We'll also be doing a miso honey glazed salmon with some stir-fried vegetables as a main course. And then for a dessert, we're going to be doing a banana nut muffin that is sweetened with honey as well. So that's what we're going to start with because it takes a little bit longer to bake. All right, so to get started, we're going to be making those banana nut muffins like I mentioned. You want to start with brown bananas. Here's the peels. Very brown bananas make it a very nice sweet muffin from all of those natural fruit sugars. So getting 3 brown bananas in there, we're going to mash them up with a fork and kind of make them mushy. for the base of these muffins.
And I'm going to save these peels, chop them up, and feed them to our worm farm in the basement. All of the trimmings are organic vegetables and fruits are going to go back to the worms, so they give us great compost.
Exactly.
And I'm Hannah's sous chef.
Yes, she is. She's
So
going to be
I'll
helping me out.
Helping her out.
So mashing up those bananas, they'll kind of come together and become a little sticky. Bananas, this is actually a interestingly heart healthy recipe. There's so many components of these muffins that are actually really good for heart health. Bananas, you might have heard, have a lot of potassium in them, which is a good nutrient, a good electrolyte to keep high in the body because it actually helps to lower blood pressure. It counters the effect of salt and kind of lowers blood pressure in return. So that's always good about bananas and other sort of fruits and vegetables that are high in potassium. The next step we're going to do is we're going to add some more of the liquid ingredients. And so we have vanilla, oil, an egg, and some honey, of course. So the honey we'll go ahead and add soon.
How much honey do you need?
We need 1/3 of a cup.
Okay.
So this is it, Mama sous chef. If you want to go ahead and scoop it in there, I'll add the other ingredients first.
Today we're using creamed honey from our bees.
Yum.
So it's like this instead of liquid honey, and it's a process that you use, but you never heat it over 110 degrees because under 110 degrees is considered raw. So this has lots of packed with enzymes and nutrients and antioxidants.
Yeah.
When it's raw.
So when it's raw, the enzymes will be able to do their work, and of course it's better to keep it raw. When you're baking with honey, it's not always possible, of course, to keep it below that temperature, which is okay, but if you can have some honey raw as well, then you get the benefit of those enzymes. The honey also does have antioxidant compounds. Those are called flavonoids and phenolic compounds technically, but basically what they do is they help to protect against chronic disease in the body, and they come from the pollen of the flowers that the bees actually use to make the honey. That's why table sugar isn't going to have that, but honey does. So it's a little bit of a healthier alternative when you're going to use sugar to use honey for that reason.
And is there a general rule of thumb, Hannah, for how to substitute honey for sugar in recipes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, honey is slightly sweeter than sugar, just tablespoon for tablespoon or cup for cup. So anything under about a cup, you can sub 1 to 1. So you can put in about a 1/2 cup of sugar and a 1/2 cup of honey. But anything over a cup, you want to reduce the honey that you put in by about about 3/4 of what you would normally put in if you were putting in sugar. So if you're putting in 2 cups of honey, you might want to put in 2 cups of sugar, you might want to put in like a cup and a half of honey instead.
Great.
All right, so we're going to mix that in. Over here, going to add the avocado oil. Avocado oil is a fat that's liquid at room temperature. That typically means it's unsaturated. So liquid fats at room temperature tend to be better for heart health than solid fats at room temperature. So again, another little heart healthy tip there. Moving that in. We're going to add egg next. Crack that in carefully, try not to get the gels in. Perfect. Mix it all in. So you've got all your wet ingredients here first. We're also going to add in a little bit of vanilla here in a second. So here's our cute little teaspoons over here. The vanilla that we have is actually clear. It's a type of Mexican vanilla. And so you can use that. You can use brown vanilla. Doesn't matter as long as it's some vanilla. So that's why it looks clear. So next we're going to sort of fold in a little bit of those solid dry ingredients. So we use, in this recipe, a combination of all-purpose flour and whole wheat flour. For almost all of my baked goods, I make it a bit of a rule of thumb to do that because you can hardly notice the texture difference if you do half and half. But that fiber from the whole grain really helps to reduce blood sugar spikes and is also correlated with higher heart health, is a diet that's high in fiber. So I always like to sub it when I can. You don't have to if you don't want to. It's totally going to be your preference. So that's 3/4 of a cup of whole wheat flour and then 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. Just a little half and half mix there. So we need 1 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we'll start with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt right over here. Here's a dish towel. Thank you. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That actually helps to activate the baking soda. That's why you need salt in these recipes, because otherwise it doesn't work as well. I'm gonna rinse this out from the vanilla and get a teaspoon of baking soda. Now we just mix it all together with my new spoon here. Thanks, Mama. All right, so these are going to be banana nut muffins, actually. So you can use whatever nuts you like. I typically like walnuts with bananas because I think that that's a great flavor combo. And once again, walnuts are probably one of the healthiest nuts that you could choose because they have something called omega-3 fatty acids in them. And if you've heard of those before, you might have heard them associated with fish and fish oil. Well, walnuts, along with flax seeds, are one of the best plant sources of these very essential fats. They're really essential for brain health through all stages of life, you know, from infancy and development all the way through older age.
That looks well mixed.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's pretty done.
Pretty done. Got to fold in those walnuts.
Yeah, good idea.
So folding in these walnuts. It's also been shown that diets high in omega-3 fatty acids coming from natural foods benefit heart health, but from supplements, the data is a little bit unclear. So if you can't get it from your food, it's a good idea too. Here we go, folding in those walnuts.
And then when we spoon it in, we'll just spoon it in about 3/4 full, right, Hannah?
That's right.
And we have these little baby muffin tins
Muffin
that I
tins.
just greased with some organic shortening. And we'll set them up and put them in the oven. Show you then.
Okay, so next up we're going to be doing a goat cheese, fig, and honey crostini, which is a great appetizer, just a very simple appetizer to please a crowd. So we have some fresh figs over here, which I think are so beautiful, so we wanted to cut them up in front of you. But look at those. You can take a sharp knife and cut them sort of lengthwise like this, very thinly. Figs are nice and subtly sweet, so they're a great fruit to have as a savory appetizer as well. They're used a lot with cheese. I'm going to cut a few slices of these. All right, so now that we have our figs chopped up, we're going to assemble the toasts. So what I've done first is actually with these slices of baguette. You just take a baguette that's normal that looks like this, slice it into sort of thin little rounds, and then you can brush each of those rounds with olive oil and broil them in the oven for a couple of minutes until they're nice and toasty like this.
Raven.
So we're just going to start to sort of spread this goat cheese on some toast.
Okay.
So this is a nice local Chev goat cheese, which is a soft type of goat cheese. We get ours from Haystack Mountain, which is one of our local creameries around here. So just taking however much you want really of it, kind of getting it out of there, taking it on a toast, spreading it here like this into a nice rustic layer. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then once you have it on the toast like that, you take a couple of slices of fig. You layer the fig on top of the toast like this. Don't overcrowd, but that looks really nice right there. And then as a final touch, you're going to drizzle some honey on top, of course. So honey, here's our creamed honey. I'm just going to sort of try to make it as liquidy as possible and do a little drizzle right on top.
It stays on there so nicely because of
does.
the creaminess of it.
Exactly. So this creamed honey is perfect for this. And so we do that.
And we'll make them all and show you at the end.
Yep. Okay. So now we've finished all of our little fig appetizers, and we're going to go ahead and broil them really just for 1 minute to 3 minutes, depending on your oven. Okay. So we'll stick them in there, and they'll come out nice and golden.
How do those look, Hannah?
They look like the honey's melted, so I don't think we should do too much more commercials. All right, so they're nice and crispy hot. The figs are soft. The honey is melted.
Here.
Yeah.
So, put it right on the
We'll put it
stone.
right over here.
And when it cools off, we're going to give it a try.
All right, so now we're going to try them. The fig and goat cheese crostinis. So
And this
just-
is Cynthia Chica, BeeChicas, and she's our videographer, but she's going to try the Crostinis.
I'm happy to get to taste.
All right, so pick whichever one you want. Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.
Mm-mm.
Mm.
They're really
Yum.
good.
Wow.
So good. The fresh figs.
Excellent.
Mm.
Yum.
Hi there. I didn't know if there was any questions that anyone had regarding these recipes before we head into the salmon and stir-fried vegetables.
Yes, we had a question. How do you get creamed honey?
Okay, it's a really cool process. We use regular honey, regular liquid honey, and then we put a creamed honey into the honey. I don't know the proportions off the top of my head, but you stir in a certain very small proportion of creamed honey. And I actually buy Rice's honey, the Colorado honey that's creamed. I buy it at like Safeway or King Soopers. And then usually do it in a big 5-gallon bucket. And I think it's 1 pound for a 5-gallon bucket, might be 3 pounds. We can put that recipe up later. And then I put it in our sauna and I keep it warm for about a day and I stir it up every once in a while. It doesn't get over 100 degrees in our dry sauna. But then I make a whole bucket, 5-gallon bucket of creamed honey.
Could I add to that, Teresa?
Yeah.
Honey crystallizes at below, or honey melts, the crystals melt at 95 degrees. So that's why Teresa will put honey in her solarium to heat it up so that the natural crystals that might have already started in her honey don't start propagating. So the idea is to use commercial honey that the crystals are broken down to be really fine. And when you add 1 to 10, like 1 part creamed honey to your honey, that would be 10 parts, that the crystals like grow on the existing crystals and make that creamy honey. And I mean, in Canada, where I'm from, everybody buys crystallized creamed honey, and it's because there the honey crystallizes naturally really fast. And if you just let it sit on your shelf and crystallize, which it will, it could be really coarse, and then you worry about the moisture content like separating. There'll be a liquid film on the top and the bottom will be coarse crystals. And then your honey moisture content goes above 18 and it starts to ferment. So you can do it on your own small scale by adding like a couple, you don't even need 1 to 10, just a couple teaspoons. It just takes longer. So it's temperature and time that make it crystallize. So cool temperatures like your garage will force the crystallization in a week if you do that 1 to 10.
Thank you, Tracy. I made this last year and I haven't extracted my honey this year, so I was going to look up that recipe again. But now you shared it with me last year.
Nice. So we've heard, someone was saying, I've heard the honey isn't as beneficial when used in baking or high temperature cooking. Is that correct? Does it lose some of the nutritional properties?
It does lose the antioxidants, and that's why if you use honey just like as a drizzle but don't heat it up, that would be perfect. Or on our banana nut muffins, we put raw honey on there afterwards on our warm muffins, so that works. But yes, during baking, it does change the nutritional content, but the glycemic index is better to use honey rather than white sugar, because white sugar will make it spike even. So it is better for you because of that, especially if it's athletic.
And Teresa, do you know at what's the temperature that the antioxidants start to dissipate?
110 degrees.
Okay, so thank
you. So
you.
you bake something, yes, they're not there.
Tracy?
Yeah, I forgot to say that the sugar content of say a tablespoon of honey, the fructose to glucose in a tablespoon of honey is about equivalent to an apple. So sometimes at night for health benefits, to help people sleep, so your liver doesn't wake you up in the middle of the night, people will eat a tablespoon of honey instead of an apple, because the fiber in the apple is harder to digest. So a tablespoon of honey at night, if you're having trouble sleeping.
Great, thank you. And viewers, if you're live with us, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll continue with the video.
All right, yes, so now we're gonna make our entree for the day, which is a miso honey glazed salmon with some fresh stir-fried vegetables. So we have here, as you can see, these beautiful salmon fillets. This is coho salmon, and I think Atlantic salmon as well. They look very similar, but all salmon is, very healthy for you because it has omega-3 fatty acids, kind of like we talked about with the walnuts. Very good for brain health, very good for heart health. If you replace meat with a serving of fish a couple times a week, studies have shown that that can really benefit heart health. So salmon is one of the better ones to do that for because it has those omega-3s. So we are going to go ahead and take these and sort of put them in a skillet right now. We're going to be baking these in the oven. I love to bake fish in a cast iron skillet because it heats pretty evenly and it makes it really nicely cooked and evenly cooked. So I'm going to go ahead and lay them right in here right now, skin side down. This is a very simple dish once you get all the ingredients prepped, which we've done a little bit ahead of time. So I'm going to show you some of the ingredients that we're going to add to the glaze. Here in this bowl, I've added some white miso, about 2 tablespoons, a teaspoon of chopped ginger, a teaspoon of chopped garlic, and a tablespoon of rice vinegar. So that's going to be the base for it. And then, of course, we're going to add some honey.
Excellent. And speaking of honey, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the health benefits of honey versus sugar?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, they do have antioxidants that sugar is completely devoid of, and so that can benefit all sorts of different types of health. Also, honey tends to have a lower glycemic index than sugar does. So the glycemic index has to do with how quickly your blood sugar spikes after eating a certain food. When your blood sugar spikes really high, that can result in a later sugar crash, which can make you feel tired and lethargic. And for people with diabetes, that can be a real dangerous situation too. They want to keep their blood sugar as even as possible. So the higher the glycemic index, the more the blood sugar spike. Honey has a lower glycemic index than sugar, so it keeps your blood sugar nice and even, as opposed to sugar, which will spike it up a little bit more. Both are types of sugar, and so they do have a relatively higher glycemic index, but honey is definitely the better choice between the two. All right.
Excellent.
So we also have 2 tablespoons of honey. This is about a tablespoon. I'm just going to eyeball this. Some people measure exactly. I'm more of an eyeballer, so that's about a tablespoon right there, and I'm going to add another one. Now we're just going to mix all these things together.
And this recipe again is?
It's miso and honey glazed salmon with stir-fried vegetables.
It's a white miso.
It's
so
a white
more
miso.
mellow. It doesn't have quite a bite to it.
Yeah,
and
and
some of the other misos.
for sure. And for those of you who don't know, miso is sort of like a fermented, it's a Japanese food. It's a fermented bean paste. And so it actually is fermented and has probiotics, which benefit gut health. It helps to create healthy colonies of gut bacteria and other microorganisms in the gut. So fermented foods are great to add to your diet however you can. Of course, they're better eaten raw because then the bacteria survive a little bit better, but they're delicious to cook with as well. All right, so we've mixed up that glaze. The next step is we're going to go ahead and sort of spread the glaze over the salmon just a little bit. So take that. We didn't add additional salt to this marinade because miso tends to be pretty salty. But you can add an extra sprinkle of salt to the top if you choose, or a crack of black pepper, which I love to do. So get it nice and even over there with some chunks of garlic and some chunks of ginger on there for flavor. I'll do this on the other side too.
And Hannah, when you chopped up the ginger, did you keep the skins on? I thought you did.
I did not. I peeled them off. You don't have to peel them off. They just can be, especially if you're chopping them up very fine. That'll add a little extra fiber. There's nothing poisonous about it or anything. It just tends to be a little tough to chew through. So you can do that if you want. Oftentimes when I'm making food that requires blending ginger, like blending it in a blender, I won't take the skins off because it pretty much pulverizes it.
So then you want me to put some cracked pepper on the top?
Yes, I think that would be great. So there you go.
Great.
All right, that looks delicious. So I'm going to take this. We're going to put it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. So I like to cook it for 10 and then broil it for the last few minutes if possible to give it a nice sear on top.
Excellent.
All right, so now that we have our salmon in the oven, we are going to go to the vegetables, which is the side for this dish. And you can do a couple of different sides for the dish. You can do it with brown rice. You can do it with white rice, adding those to the vegetables for a little bit of a heartier meal. We skip that step just for ease of this video, but you can always add those in too. So here's the vegetables that we have. We're going to do some stir-fry vegetables, including carrots. We have a beautiful tricolor carrot blend here. We've already chopped these up just to make it a little easier. We've got some snow peas down here, chopped up as well. We've got some baby bok choy, which is a Chinese cabbage plant from the cabbage family, and it's sliced up here like that. And some shiitake mushrooms because they're my absolute favorite.
That's great.
But you can also use any type of vegetable that you have on hand. If you have broccoli, if you have bell peppers, whatever is in your fridge, you can just go ahead and toss into a stir fry, which is the great thing about stir fries. So no need to buy special fancy ingredients. If you don't want to, you can just use whatever is available to you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put them over here. I like to put in the less quick cooking vegetables first. So that would be the carrots in this case, and to take just a little bit longer. Anything that's fresh and green is going to take very little time, minutes at most.
Oh.
All right, so we're going to add these veggies to the pan now. We're starting with the veggies that take the longest to cook, like these carrots, and then moving on through the ones that take the least to cook, like these bok choy over here. And we're just going to saute them until they're all tender. All right, so we finished up with our veggies and our salmon. Our salmon is right here. We just finished broiling the top, and it has a nice crust on there from the miso, the garlic and ginger, and the honey and black peppers. So that's going to be a very flavorful piece of fish. Mm-hmm. We've also finished stir frying our vegetables over here. As you can see, we added the greens very last so that they stay bright green. We also added a little bit of tamari sauce, which is like soy sauce, only is made from 100% soy instead of a blend of soy and wheat like normal soy sauce.
So it's gluten-free.
So it's 100% gluten-free. Yeah. So for those who are gluten-free, tamari is a better choice than soy sauce. Surprisingly, because you think soy sauce would be pure soy. It's actually not. So, all right, to finish up, what we're going to do is we're going to chop up these onions. Green onions are a great garnish for any Asian food. So I'm just going to sort of do a little rough chop here on a bias, make them look nice and pretty. Finish those. There we go. And we'll plate it up. This is a very simple dinner or lunch that you can make, but it's fancy looking enough to impress. So what we'll do is we'll just sort of take one of those salmons. I left the skin on the pan, so you don't have to eat the skin. Plate it right there.
Very good trick.
And then we are going to use some of the spoon here to divide the veggies onto our plate. And as you can see, we've got the combination of peas, mushrooms, carrots, bok choy today, but you can use whatever you have on hand and whatever you enjoy. We'll finish it off, sprinkling it with some green onions.
Yum! Okay, here we are ready to taste this delicious salmon dish.
We divided it, and one for Cynthia, which is sitting over there.
It's
So
really
delicious.
good. Can you taste the honey?
Oh, yes, you can taste the honey, but it's not overpowering. It's perfect. Really good. And then these vegetables are so beautiful.
So beautiful. And some beautiful flowers to go with it as well.
This vase was made by Fonta Watson. She's a local artisan.
Yeah, follow Fonta Watson. She has beautiful pottery.
Seasonal flowers, and we are just so happy you joined us today. Thank you for coming to our kitchen and learning about honey from Hannah. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Hannah. This was such an informative, wonderful time. We really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure to do this, and bon appetit, everybody.
So I made a simple syrup using honey and water, spring water, and dried lavender from my garden. And I boiled this mixture, and we're giving you a recipe on our website. And for 5 minutes, only 5 minutes. And then I let it cool. And before it gets bitter, I wanted to pour off the lavender syrup, honey syrup, and what's left is the dried lavender. And now it's infused in the honey syrup, and it's for our honey lavender lemonade.
Okay. So that was the very beginning part that we pre-recorded about the final recipe that we're making tonight, which is the lavender lemonade. And it's such a simple recipe that we thought we would just do that in person in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So
do we have any questions, first of all, from the rest of the other recipes before we start in on our lemonade?
We do. We had a question. Is there a difference if you use creamed honey or regular honey in a recipe? And if so, do you use the same amount?
I'm pretty sure there's no difference, but do any of the other baking chicas have
No
an opinion?
difference. You're right. Yep.
Great. And then another question was, viewer shared, can't wait to try these recipes. Do you have a favorite green salad dressing that uses honey?
we do, but what we'll have to that. Do you have one in mind right now, Tracy?
Do you have one in mind, Tracy?
Matt from Seeds Cafe at the library, he has a really good one and shared that honey recipe with us. And so I'll get Matt's recipe for a honey dressing, but we make it a lot just with vinegar, oil, and honey as sweetener. And then we might put a little bit of like Dijon mustard in there as well, and some salt and pepper. And that's pretty much it. But we'll try to post Matt's from Seeds.
And what I like to do, I use these Japanese kind of a serrated bowl and a grinder, a wooden grinder, and I put herbs in here from my garden. I'll put in thyme and parsley and whatever I pick, dill or something like that, and I grind it up with salt and garlic. Very good. Put olive oil in there, and then pour the whole mixture into a bottle and add the vinegar and honey and some Dijon mustard, and shake that up and let it sit, and then strain off the herbs. That's my favorite green dressing recipe.
Wonderful, thank you. And we'll get the link from Tracy if she can find it. And we'll save the rest of the questions for after your next recipe.
Great. Okay. Start just talking a little bit about and showing you a couple things about the honey simple syrup. You saw how she made it in the video.
So here it is. The thing is, we accidentally shook it up a little bit, but it was separated. So I wanted to let you know that it becomes kind of liquid with some solids at the bottom because of the dried lavender. And this is the dried lavender that we got from my garden. And so we just took a couple tablespoons according to the recipe and put that into the simple syrup. And I strained it off when it cooled. Or you can let it sit overnight in the refrigerator and then strain it off.
Okay, so the most important thing probably about this whole recipe is that you want to use fresh squeezed lemons. It makes all of the difference. So we have a pitcher here, and I'm just going to squeeze some lemon juice in here. A couple of seeds is no problem at all.
They'll just go to the bottom.
Yeah.
But if you want to strain it and not have seeds in it, you can do it separately like we did with this other little.
But we happen to have some already squeezed fresh lemon juice that I'm going to pour in here. This is about 2 cups of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And then we do equal parts of water. And we are going to put these in separate glasses right now because you can put regular water or you can use sparkling water. Teresa has a special water sparkling machine that she can turn regular tap water into sparkling water in an instant. And
it's called SodaStream. People know about that.
Yeah. And so it's very simple. And we're just going to get our glasses and do 2 different ones. I have to put the simple syrup in here. Here we go. Simple syrup.
How much do you put in for 2 cups?
For 2 cups, we decided we made it 4 tablespoons of simple syrup.
Because we don't like it so sweet. So you can kind of do it to taste. The recipe calls for a little bit more simple syrup than what we're putting in. But it's so delicious, the simple syrup.
It has a light lavender flavor to it, which is lovely.
Then we stir it up and pour some in a glass.
And it's about half of this mixture to half water. So I'm
1 to 1. And so she'll just do half the glass. Yeah. Then I'll put in my sparkling because I like the little bubbles. And it's really to taste. You can adjust it. It's very simple. There we are. That. And you can garnish with lavender, and you can put strawberries in it or kiwi, and just do it to your taste. And we're going to try it. And if it's cocktail hour, you can add your cocktail edition of your choice. Vodka works really well with a light lemon. Delicious, delicious, but I'm going to add a little bit more simple syrup into mine. You should have some. I think I'll have a little more too. Okay, all right. And there you have it. Cheers. Cheers. Happy fall. Yes?
Teresa, I have a question. You mentioned picking lavender from your garden. Can you use any lavender that you're growing, or certain lavenders more culinary based?
Some chefs are very particular about the different culinary lavenders, and I've heard a lot of them say that French lavender, particularly Provence variety of lavender, is the very best for cooking. Other people will say they can't really taste the difference between the French varieties versus the English varieties. The English would be like Hidcote or Munstead, lavender angustifolia types, and those seem to hold their color better when you dry them, and people use those for bouquets more. So it really, the bottom line is, no, it doesn't really matter. I don't. Except I think you should know where you gather your lavender from, that there's are no pesticides used. So preferably, I grow lavender in my garden, and I use only my lavender. Or you can get it from a friend that has a beautiful lavender field and doesn't use pesticides.
And Cynthia, you had mentioned about like using different lavender. Are there other things that you would use to change the flavor of honey? David's remark earlier about the smoke changing his honey. Are there other things that you would like to infuse honey with, and how would you do that?
Oh my gosh, the possibilities are endless. You can infuse your honey. A lot of people infuse it with different, like cinnamon or different flavors from their own gardens, mint. There's so many different things you can infuse. You can do like a strawberry honey if you want. And on the other side of that, a lot of people use honey to flavor other things. Like people will do honey-infused vodkas. Now all the mixologists are using honey simple syrups infused with all different flavors, not just lavender, like elderflower and all kinds of things. So honey is a very versatile substance.
And so would you combine pollen with honey for both taste and health benefits if you're going for more of the medicinal value? I think Tracy's talked about using pollen for, as it was, the allergies.
Exactly. Yep. Deborah, you have a story about allergies and pollen.
Oh, my mom. Yeah. So my mom has terrible airborne allergies. And of course, she's a fan of my honey, but she lives out of state. And so I encouraged her to find a local beekeeper where she lives, because I knew that the pollen in that honey would help her treat her own airborne allergies. And so she went to her farmer's market and connected with a beekeeper. And that season, she didn't have to take her allergy medicine once. So it was a very, very beneficial situation for her.
Great, thank you.
And Tracy, don't you infuse with medicinal herbs in some of your honeys? Or am I thinking of someone else?
Well, there are some honeys, is it a Winter Park honey, where they actually vacuum trees for pollen and add them to their honey. So I don't know, you get a huge dose of that airborne pollen that you're talking about.
And also Tim Broad, who's a local beekeeper, he does medicinal honeys. I think sells them at Whole Foods, and he does, blends with
And
herbs.
yeah, Tim sells at the Boulder Farmers Market. He has a turmeric honey, and he does some immune system herbs that are beneficial, and like some lung herbs.
Yeah. So I have added rose hips ground to my honey to add more vitamin C. What else have I added? Cinnamon, of course. But Echinacea, there was a workshop at the Boulder Library by Adriana, and she put Echinacea in her honey. And so that was good.
Tim's honey company is called Highland Bees.
Oh.
Highland honey.
He also, I know, infuses honey with the Osha root.
Yes,
which is
Oh.
very medicinal for your lung health.
Yeah.
And so is elderberry, really good immune system builder. People might need that these days.
And that, sorry, Kathy.
So Tracy, I would guess that you don't want to cook with the medicinal honey if you want to keep the properties, but it would be okay to like drizzle on top of your food.
Right. Yeah. Keeping it raw keeps those vitamins and minerals and the enzymes intact. They break down with heat. Yeah. But talking about elderberry syrup, we have a recipe cheat sheet of my favorite honey recipes. And one of them is elderberry syrup on there. So there's about like 15 recipes on there. And we have a short link to it, but Cynthia's going to put it on our BeeChicas website. But right now we do have a link to it, and I could share my screen. Kathy, if you want to share my screen. Okay, so there's a lot of recipes on there. There's chocolate coconut oat bars. Our favorite is these carrot muffins here. So it keeps them really moist, and a lot of eggs. These are all gluten-free, but you can put real flours in these. They're all adjusted for our gluten-free diet, but we have for kids Noel's 1-minute chocolate microwave cake. And there is some granola, homemade like Ferrero Rocher with honey, if you want to make your own, and some raw chocolate macaroons. Anyway, we will put that. And then here's the elderberry syrup up here. It's hard to see. So we'll put it on our BeeChicas website.
Great, thank you. And so do you have other favorite baking recipes, Tracy? Baking with honey?
Oh, well, I like moist quick bread. So I really prefer to swap out honey, like in banana bread and carrot muffins and zucchini chocolate cake with honey. So I just find a recipe I like, and then we modify it because we know, and a lot of eggs when you're gluten-free, especially using like coconut or almond flours or sorghum, you want to add more eggs. So those recipes are heavy because we have chickens too.
No.
and if you're vegan and you don't want to use eggs, you can do an egg substitute with ground flaxseed and water, and you let that mixture sit until it becomes gelatinous, kind of like an egg, and you add that into your baking.
Great. And Teresa, did you have a substitute if you're a vegetarian for that salmon recipe that Hannah made?
We've made it with tofu kind of fillets. I'll get a cake of tofu and slice it in 2 or 3 pieces and put those down and put the same marinade on top and bake it and broil it. And there you go. Tofu fillet.
Nice. And did you have suggestions if you didn't want to purchase the specialty oils that were in the video?
Yes, you can use any heart-healthy oils, not hydrogenated oils, but like olive oil, which may have a little more of a flavor to it. But what other oils can be substituted, chicas? Canola would be a good baking oil. Safflower, sunflower.
Great, wonderful.
Or organic oils, because a lot of those are flowering plants that the bees go to, and so we want to encourage pesticide-free or organic oils as well, especially for like sunflower and safflower and canola oil, because those are big fields of monocropping, actually, a lot of it, but so buy organic for that reason also.
Wonderful.
Also, on the banana nut muffins, I made a second batch this week because our family's gluten-free, And instead of the whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour, I did half all-purpose gluten-free flour, and then I added a combination of almond flour, spelt flour, and used an eighth of ground flaxseed for more texture. And I used 1.5 cups of, gluten-free flour, and it made delicious muffins.
Wow, wonderful. So to wrap up your presentation, did you have anything else to add? Because I have one more question for each of you. Yeah. What I would like to know is, what is your favorite way to enjoy your honey? So I have to admit, when I had the great delight of going over to Deborah's one day, and that picture that was in the at the beginning of the slides with the different colors of honey, you could actually see there was a spring honey and a fall honey and a summer honey, and the colors were amazing. And so for me, just scooping it right out of the jar is probably my favorite way to enjoy honey. What about you, Deborah?
I'm the same. I don't bake as much as the other chicas, so we tend to use honey here just raw. We drizzle it on things. I think this summer we did grilled peaches and drizzled honey on them for dessert, and it was spectacular. That was probably my best bite all summer.
I agree on grilled peaches and regular peaches, anything.
Stunning. Yeah.
And I do like a nice piece of gluten-free toast or with honey and cinnamon.
Yes.
And butter.
No butter, not for me.
Oh my gosh. My absolute favorite breakfast is sliced peaches, just fresh and juicy and delicious. A thinly sliced piece of sourdough toast drizzled with honey with butter.
Okay.
And
Tracy?
I can't think of just one thing, but all summer we were making lemonades, and they're sweetened with honey, and then you don't have to heat. You don't have to heat the water. That's what Teresa and Cynthia are enjoying right now. But yeah, and you can taste the honey through the lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want.
Oh, but there is one.
Oh, go ahead. I can taste the lavender
Okay,
so much in this. It's delicious.
Okay, let me tell you one more thing. I'm back. This is our honey, BeeChicas honey. And what I do is when I finish a jar of honey.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I can't get the rest out of that jar. So I'll pour warm water in, not hot, but just warm. And I'll let it sit and shake it up. And after a while, it's perfect for making lemonade. So you use up every little scrap of raw honey that way.
After all, a honeybee in its entire lifetime only makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. So you don't want to waste a drop.
That's right. Oh, thank you for that tip. That was wonderful. So, chicas, thank you again for inviting us into your homes, quite literally, and for teaching us all about the benefits of honey to our bodies and also ways that we can use it for our cooking. And also thank you to the Boulder Library Foundation for sponsoring this and all of our BeeChicas workshops. We're grateful for their support. Thank you to Jess Rainey, who is our broadcast engineer in the background, and along with everyone who tuned in to watch questions. You can find out more about Boulder Public Library's Seed to Table series by visiting boulderlibrary.org, Seed to Table. And if you know others who would enjoy this event, remember that this has been recorded and will be available to watch on the Boulder Public Library's YouTube channel. So visit us for more BeeChicas programs. We have another workshop coming up in December. And chicas, thank you again. It's always a joy to be with you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Everyone.
Buen provecho.
Bon appetit.